Well, this is weird. And not in the way that Mr. Perney talked about when he spoke. I do want to reaffirm everything that he said about this being a special place and to seize all of the opportunities that you have. But for me, this is weird in a different way. If you told me 5 years ago that I was going to be teaching at a private boarding school, I would have said things to you that would have got me sent to Miss Leake's office. I had all kinds of false misconceptions about what kind of people, what kind of students went to boarding schools. And it's funny how God has a way, and the Holy Spirit has a way of directing me to places that I would have never imagined myself. So faith is something that's always been important to me since I was young. However, it's taken different forms as I've gotten older. Going to college, I knew that faith was something important to me. I knew that I wanted to continue my relationship with God and have that grow deeper. So one of the first places I went when I got onto Northwestern's campus, go Cats, is to the Catholic Center. So one of the campus ministers told me about their annual trip to Nicaragua, and it was much like y'all's trip. You go down for a week, you get to see part of the country, you get to work for about 4 or 5 days on a small project that hopefully will inspire and boost the people along on their road. I took my Spanish in high school because it was obligatory. You had to take it in Texas to graduate from high school. Entonces yo hablaba así y como ustedes. And so that's how I spoke Spanish at the time. I couldn't have found Nicaragua on the map, and I had no interest in Central America, but I knew I had to go. It was the kind of knowing that comes from a deep place inside of you, like someone who knows you better than yourself. I have to say it was the Holy Spirit. So I wanted to go freshman year, but my parents said, no, we want you home. We want you home for Christmas break and all of it. So sophomore year I went, and I was really drawn to Nicaragua and was really struck by it. I was struck, and at the time I really couldn't communicate why I was struck by it. But looking back, it was the simple way of life, the rugged way of life, the determination that people had, and the extremely raw natural beauty. That's what got under my skin. And the energy that the kids had, the unceaseless energy. We see Energizer Bunny commercials. These kids will just keep going and going on a nibble of food and who knows what. It was amazing. It really struck me. And so I knew at the end of that trip that I wanted to continue working with this organization in this wonderful country, in this small village in Central America. And so after I got back to the States, I emailed the volunteer coordinator at the time and told her, I want to come down this summer and work with you guys. And she said, great. You can come down and be an English teacher. An English teacher in Managua. Well, I'd always wanted to teach, and I like Nicaragua, but Managua was a really nasty place. For those of you who have been there, it's really gross. And English is not really my thing, but I said, you know what? I really want to be in Nicaragua, and I really want to give teaching a shot. So I'll do it. So I signed up and went down there. Lo and behold, my roommate hated my guts so much that she kicked me out. So here I am in Managua, Sunday night, and my advisor, or my boss, calls me and says, we're going to send you up to Cusmapa. Go stand outside of your house at 7 a.m. on Monday morning. A man in a truck will come by. His name will be Eduardo. I don't remember what his name was. Ride with him to the Fabretto Center. Get in a car with Rolando. I had never met Rolando at the time. But I got in a car with Rolando, who took me to a hotel where I was supposed to meet a Chinaman. Get in a bus with the Chinaman and ride up the mountain. And so those were the directions that I was given. For Nicaragua, these are very clear and precise directions. But actually, those of you who have been there can attest. So I followed the directions, got up the mountain, and ended up spending the rest of my time there doing census work. And so that gave me a really, really, really unfiltered, unaltered impression of what's going on in Nicaragua. So I was wandering around the mountains, talking to people about how many people lived in their house, where they got their water, was it clean, what were the health standards like for them, things like that. It was part of the government and Fabretto's goal to better understand the people that they serve. So a normal conversation, mind you in Spanish, might go something like this. So how many people live in your house? Okay, 15. So it's maybe the size of this stage. Where do you get your water? The river. Okay. Is the water clean? Yes. It's very good to drink. It tastes very good. Okay. Do you have a latrine? No. And occasionally I'd be brave enough to ask the next question, well then, where? The river. That is poverty. And so I was wandering around asking these people questions, probably interviewed about 4,000 people over the course of that time. And one village in particular got under my skin. This village was divided in half by a river, and during the summer, the river would flood up to about yay high. And you know, Nicaraguans are a little bit shorter than us, so yay high is maybe their heads. And so no one could cross it. There were no bridges, and when the river flooded, so be it. The river flooded. You couldn't go to school. You couldn't go to market to sell your products. And that really got under my skin because we take for granted here that there will be a bridge to let us get where we want to go at any time. There will be a snowplow to plow Highway 20. There will be salt. There will be what we need to get where we need to go. But here that was not the case. And so that really got under my skin, and I decided that I was going to change what I wanted to study. I switched to civil engineering because I saw that a lot of the world's problems could be solved with medicine or civil engineering. If these people could get to school, they had a chance of an education. If they had a chance of an education, they had a chance of going on to university and studying to be a doctor, studying to be whatever they wanted to be. But until then, they were stuck. So I really wanted to be a civil engineer. Came back to the States, switched my major to civil engineering, and I stayed in contact with Nicaragua by leading the yearly trips with the Catholic Center. I ended up going down 3 times more while I was in college as a leader. And when I graduated, I contacted Fabretto and said, you know what, I really want to come down and volunteer with you guys. And so we worked out a deal that the first year I'd be a volunteer, and the second year we would talk about being more than a volunteer to make that a longer term commitment or arrangement. So I talked to them, and what they really needed at the time was a music teacher. Again, I've always wanted to be a teacher, loved music since I was little, so I decided, you know what, I'll do it. And the agreement was that I would have a little bit of free time to work on these civil engineering projects. So I went down there. As soon as I got there, I had an introductory meeting with my immediate supervisor, and she said, you know, March is coming up in 9 months, or I guess it was 7 months or something. I'm going to need a little bit of help from you in March if you're willing to help me out. There's a school coming down, there are a couple schools coming down at the same time, and I think I want you to help out with this school from LaPorte, Indiana. It's a boarding school. I said, okay. I love high school kids. I love working with them, but really, boarding school students? Do you know what kind of people they are? Do you really know what kind of people they are? But I agreed. And so I met the group and was totally blown away. All of my preconceived notions were wrong. It was the best week I had in Nicaragua. I was really struck by their determination. If you haven't figured it out, that's y'all, your group. Your determination to try everything you possibly could. Went on a couple of sunrise hikes with Mr. Falcone and Dan. Had some great deep talks looking up at the stars about God and what is our place in the world. Was really struck by the determination of Jay Monet and leading arts and crafts. This group made a huge impression on me. Y'all made a huge impression on me. The relationship between the students and the teachers were really involved in the students' lives, and the students were really hoping to have a sense of community with one another. And so to cap it all off, the last night we were there, we were having our final reflection, and the bartender came over to me and was really angry at me because there was some misunderstanding. And so I had to go deal with this misunderstanding with an angry bartender in Spanish in Nicaragua when I was exhausted and would rather be hanging out with Lalu. Came back and was totally surprised when every person went around the circle and said, Tim, this is why we're glad you're in our life. And several of them ended with, you should come to Lalu. So now I want to answer the question, how does an awesome week like that turn into something that caused me to change the course of what I'm up to, the course of what I'm doing? I like to think back to how Moses encountered God on Mount Sinai. God didn't speak to him in the fire, in the wind, in the thunder. God spoke to him in the whisper. and it was in the subtle ways that I found my answer. I heard the answer through being quiet and listening to nudgings of my own heart and to the Holy Spirit and what they were nudging me to. I believe that we're made in the image and likeness of God, and so in the truest way for me to follow God is to be in tune with what's going on in my own heart, or one of the ways to do that. I also heard answers through conversations with friends. One of my best friends and mentors in Kuzmapa told me repeatedly, you know, I've never seen you so happy as you were that week. And so that was an affirmation of this. So listening to friends and being in tune with who I am and my relationship with God. And so as I promised my F section Algebra 2 class, I would give you all a shout out. #allreal. But really, #allreal. Part of figuring this out for me was being all real with myself. All real with myself. Who am I? What do people who I care about think that I am? Am I trying to make decisions based on impressions that other people have? Am I trying to make decisions based on what I think other people want for me? Do I have ideas in my head of what I can't be? As I was faced with the decision as to whether to come to La Lumiere, I felt that I would be losing a core part of my identity by bailing out of Nicaragua. I felt that I would have been betraying a commitment. So a wise man that wandered into my life for literally a week, wandered away and I've never seen him since, made me realize that I did not have a commitment to Fabretto in a way that I thought, and that giving them my 2 months notice and heading to La Lumiere would be sufficient. I still felt that I was betraying a core part of who I am. Again, #allreal. When I was completely honest with myself, the work that I was doing with Fabretto, teaching music, was not making me happy. If I continued this unhappiness, I was sure to spread it, and what's the use of that? I'm just making people unhappy in a place far away from home. My work was not resonating with the core of who I am. I love teaching and I love music, but I do not love teaching music. I had to be real with myself about that. But why did I still feel like I would be betraying some part of my identity if I left Nicaragua? I realized on my drive from Chicago to La Porte for a final round of interviews that the reason I felt this was that I had become the Nicaragua guy in college. I was the one with the crazy stories about getting lost in the communities in Kuzmapa, about trying to get a 30-foot boa constrictor out of a cistern in the middle of Nicaragua. When many of my friends thought of me, they thought of Nicaragua. But that's not who I am. I'm Tim Earles. I had put pressure on myself to be something that I thought others were expecting me to be. I had to make a decision based on the core of who I was and not what other people thought. How did I know what that core was? That's a question that only I could answer. And I like to think of how often Jesus wandered off into the desert. I think there's wisdom that we can learn. I think there's wisdom we can learn from that. For me, to learn myself, I had to be free of outside influences to answer the question, who am I? Just in the way Jesus did when he wandered off into the desert. I had to find a desert in order to figure this out. What I found is that I love working with young people. I love teaching. I do not love teaching music. I need to be in a supportive community. Faith needs to be an important part of my life and the community that I'm a part of. I at some point need to learn to fly an airplane. I've had this dream for a long time, and being in Nicaragua was not going to help that. So looking at La Lumiere, there was hope that making the ridiculous move to La Porte, Indiana, would be true to me in many ways that staying in Nicaragua was not. That's not to say that moving to Nicaragua was not untrue to me when I did it, but we're constantly changing. Life is constantly evolving. It's constantly an adventure, and we have to keep up with it. No, wait. What I want you to take away from this is the courage to be all real, to take the time to be real with yourself. Who are you? Not who do they say you are, but who are you? And live that out. It's not your parents or your friends that will be living out the decisions you make. It's you. Is that career choice what you really want, or is it what your parents want? Or is there a tug on your heart to try something new that you've never done before? Is there a part of your identity that you're hiding for fear of being judged? I believe that the tugs at the core of our hearts like this or God speaking? Be honest with yourself. Be all real. Thank you.